The rain in El Paso had been falling for 3 straight hours, a thin, cold sheet that made the desert smell like dust and gasoline. The streets shimmered under the yellow glow of the streetlights, puddles forming around the cracked curbs of the south side where the asphalt peeled like old skin. Mara Jennings held her son's hand tightly as they hurried up the narrow stairs to their apartment above the laundromat. Her fingers were numb, the cold seeping through her worn denim jacket, but she smiled anyway, that kind of small, stubborn smile you wear when your child is watching. "Can we have cocoa, Mama?" Ethan asked, his voice soft, tired. He was 8, pale from asthma, with the same blue-gray eyes as his father, a man Mara never spoke about anymore. "If we've got any milk left," she said, unlocking the door. The apartment smelled faintly of detergent and rain. The ceiling leaked near the window, dripping into a pot she'd set out weeks ago. The place was small, a kitchenette, a couch that doubled as her bed, and Ethan's tiny room with its single window facing the alley. But it was theirs. Mara worked nights at the hospital cafeteria and cleaned rooms at the Sunrise Motel on weekends. Every dollar mattered. Every moment of quiet counted. She was used to exhaustion, used to pushing through. But nothing could have prepared her for the knock that came that night. It was close to midnight. The rain hadn't stopped. The sound was soft at first, 3 hesitant knocks, then silence. She frowned, glancing at the clock. 11:56 p.m. "Mama," Ethan whispered. "Go to your room," she said automatically. He obeyed, peeking from behind the half-open door as she approached the entrance. The knock came again, louder, urgent now. "Who is it?" she called, her voice steady though her heart had begun to thud hard. No answer. She unlatched the chain but didn't open the door. Through the peephole she saw movement, shadows, a figure slumped against the railing. Then another behind him. And another. Her stomach tightened. "Mara," a weak voice rasped through the wood. "Please help." She froze. No one here knew her name. She opened the door 2 inches. The hallway light flickered overhead, illuminating 10 figures huddled together in the rain. Men and women, soaked, shivering, bloodied. Their faces were bruised, clothes torn, eyes wide with exhaustion and fear. "What happened?" she asked, stepping forward instinctively. The man in front, maybe 30, maybe 40, his cheeks split and bleeding, met her gaze. There was a crash. Van flipped. We were running." "Running from what?" He hesitated. "Please, they're coming back." Something inside her, that small, reckless pulse of mercy she could never suppress, made her move. She swung the door open. "Get inside. Quick." They moved slowly, limping, half carrying one another. Mud and blood smeared the floor as they entered. She didn't think, didn't weigh the danger, didn't ask questions. She just acted. She tore open her first aid box, grabbing what little she had. Alcohol wipes, gauze, bandages. She found old towels, her son's extra blankets, a bottle of peroxide. Her hands shook, but her voice stayed calm. "Sit down. You press this here. You elevate your leg." Ethan watched silently from the hallway. His stuffed bear clutched to his chest. "Mama, who are they?" "They're hurt," she said. "Go back to your room, sweetheart." He nodded slowly, retreating. The group of strangers, 10 of them, filled her small living room like ghosts. One woman couldn't stop shaking. Her lips were blue. A young man kept glancing at the window as if expecting gunfire. The smell of wet clothes and blood thickened the air. "Were you in an accident?" Mara asked again. The man who'd first spoken to her, tall, Hispanic, his left arm broken and splinted with a piece of wood, looked down. "Something like that. Do you need the hospital?" "No," he said quickly. "No hospital." That was when Mara realized. None of them had IDs. None of them wanted to be seen. Something deep in her gut went cold. She knew this city. She'd seen what fear looked like. And these people weren't afraid of dying. They were afraid of being found. She didn't sleep that night. She stayed awake, cleaning wounds, heating water on the stove, making soup from the last of her canned beans. The rain eased near dawn, but the tension didn't. Every noise outside made her glance toward the door. The man with the broken arm sat by the window, eyes fixed on the horizon. When she asked his name, he said softly, "Lucas." He looked at her like he wanted to explain something terrible, but couldn't. "You shouldn't have helped us," he said finally. "You don't know what we've done." She met his gaze, tired and unflinching. "You were bleeding in the rain. That's all I need to know." He swallowed hard, eyes glistening. "You just changed your life, Mara." By sunrise, the others were asleep, wrapped in blankets across her floor. Ethan was curled on the couch beside her, breathing softly. The city outside was gray and heavy, the storm clouds breaking apart over the desert hills. For the first time in months, she felt something strange. Not peace, not safety, but purpose. Like she'd stepped into something bigger than her small, hard life. She didn't yet know that the men she'd sheltered weren't just refugees or drifters. They were ghosts from a war that wasn't supposed to reach her doorstep. And as the morning light touched the rusted fire escape, a low rumble echoed from the distance. Hundreds of engines roaring across the dry roads of El Paso, rolling closer. When Mara looked out her window, she froze. The street below was filling. Black SUVs, pickup trucks, motorcycles, a sea of them stretching as far as she could see. Men in black jackets spilled out, armed, organized, silent. 1,000 of them. And at the center of it all, stepping out of a matte black Suburban, was a man in a white suit with a gold cross glinting at his throat. He looked up at her window, smiled, and whispered something to the men beside him. They began to move toward her building. The sun rose pale and uncertain over El Paso, cutting thin ribbons of gold through the storm clouds that still hung over the city. The streets steamed with leftover rain, the smell of wet asphalt mingling with something metallic in the air. Tension. Mara stood at the window, her breath fogging the glass, watching the slow movement below. Black vehicles lined the narrow street, their engines rumbling like distant thunder. Men moved with quiet precision, sweeping the perimeter. They weren't police. They weren't military. They were something else. Disciplined, deliberate, lethal. Ethan stirred behind her on the couch. "Mama." "Shoo." She turned quickly. "Stay quiet, baby." He rubbed his eyes. "Who are they?" She forced a small, steady smile. "Just people looking for someone." But the lie caught in her throat like smoke. In the corner of the room, Lucas, the man with the broken arm, was awake, watching her. His eyes were sharp, alert now, stripped of exhaustion. He had the bearing of someone who'd seen this before. "They found us," he said quietly. Mara's pulse spiked. "Who?" He nodded toward the street. "The cartel." The word hit her like ice water. "Cartel." He stood, grimacing from the pain in his arm. "We stole from them. Medicine. Food. We were trying to leave Mexico. We thought we could make it to Arizona. But one of our trucks flipped near the border. They followed the blood trail. You brought them here." Her voice trembled, then rose before she caught herself. "You brought them to my home." He met her gaze. "We didn't mean to. You shouldn't have opened that door." She turned away, heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Downstairs, someone slammed a car door. A man barked an order in Spanish. "What do they want?" Lucas hesitated. "And anyone who helped us." The silence that followed was heavier than the storm. Ethan's small voice broke it. "Mama, are we in trouble?" She knelt beside him, brushing his hair from his forehead. Her hands were shaking. "Not if we stay quiet, sweetheart." Lucas moved to the window again, scanning the street. "We can't stay here. Once they start searching, they'll find us in minutes." "Then go," Mara said sharply. "Take your people and go." "We can't," he said, voice low. "Half of them can't walk. The woman with the head wound might not make it another mile. You think they'll let you live after what you've done for us?" She stared at him, speechless. From the alley came the crunch of boots on wet gravel. Someone shouted. Lucas's jaw tightened. "They're moving in." Mara rushed to the kitchen, grabbing the old cordless phone. Her hand hovered over the numbers. 911. Lucas shook his head. Don't. You call the cops and they'll die too. Those men don't leave witnesses. Her thumb froze. Then what the hell do we do? She whispered. He glanced at the others, the injured, the terrified. We survive. The first knock came at 7:42 a.m. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Mara Jennings, a voice called through the door. Calm, polite, with an accent that curled around her name like a knife. We know you're inside. Lucas motioned for silence. The man outside continued, almost gently. You have something that belongs to me. Bring them out, and no one has to die today. Mara's stomach twisted. Ethan clutched her leg. Lucas crouched beside the window, peeking through the curtain. That's him, he whispered. Miguel Reyes. The name meant nothing to Mara, but the way Lucas said it, like a curse, made her blood run cold. Reyes was looking directly at her building. His white suit gleamed under the washed-out morning light, spotless despite the mud. Around him, men carried rifles slung low, waiting. Lucas looked at her. There's a back exit through the laundromat, right? Yes. Then we move now. He helped the others up, whispering instructions. Mara grabbed Ethan's backpack, stuffing in what she could. Inhaler, cereal bars, her worn wallet. They slipped out the back, down the narrow stairwell that smelled of bleach and oil. The old washing machines downstairs hummed softly, the fluorescent lights flickering. As they passed the back door, Mara heard the front one crash open above them, with splintering voices shouting in Spanish. Go! Lucas hissed. They burst into the alley. The morning air hit like a slap, cold, sharp, alive with sirens somewhere far off. The group stumbled through puddles, moving toward the side street that led to the highway. Mara turned once, saw dark figures pouring into her apartment window, guns drawn, shadows against the curtains. Her heart broke in a strange, silent way. Everything she owned, everything she'd worked for, gone in seconds. But there was no time to grieve. A gunshot cracked through the air, then another. One of the injured men fell hard, screaming. Mara froze. Lucas grabbed her arm. Keep moving. They ducked behind a row of dumpsters. Bullets sparked against the metal, the smell of gunpowder mixing with trash and rain. Ethan sobbed quietly into her shoulder, his small body trembling. Mama, I'm scared. I know, baby, she whispered, pressing his head close. I know. Lucas peeked around the corner. 2 trucks blocking the exit, he muttered. We need to get across the yard. Mara followed his gaze. A fenced lot filled with rusted cars, the gate half open on the far side. Beyond it, the old drainage tunnel that led toward the Rio Grande. Go, she said. They ran. The air was thick with shouts, engines roaring to life. Mara's lungs burned. Her shoes slipped on wet gravel. Lucas fired a single shot from a pistol he'd kept hidden, the sound echoing like thunder. They reached the fence. Lucas pushed Ethan through first, then Mara, then the others. Behind them, men were closing in, shouting, firing. As Mara stumbled into the tunnel, her breath ragged, she looked back once more. Lucas was still outside, covering them. His white shirt was soaked in rain and blood. Go, he shouted. Then the tunnel swallowed them, dark and echoing, the sound of water dripping from the concrete walls. Mara kept running, holding Ethan's hand so tightly her knuckles ached. Every echo behind them felt like footsteps, every shadow like danger. When they finally emerged miles downstream, the sun was high and blinding. The desert stretched endless and merciless around them. The others collapsed against the rocks, gasping. Mara looked back toward the city, a haze of dust and heat now, and felt something hollow open inside her. Her home was gone. Her life was gone. And though she didn't know it yet, the choices she made in the next 24 hours would decide not only her fate but the fate of everyone standing in that dry riverbed. Because Lucas had kept one secret from her, the real reason the cartel wanted him. And it was sleeping inside her son's backpack. The desert at midday looked endless, a white, blinding sea of dust and silence stretching out toward the distant shimmer of the mountains. The sun burned overhead, merciless, turning the metal fragments in the sand into glints of light that stabbed at the eyes. Mara's breath came in short, shallow bursts. Her shoes were soaked from the drainage tunnel, now caked in dust. Ethan stumbled beside her. His small face flushed red with heat. "Water," he murmured. She handed him the last of it, a few warm sips from a half-crushed bottle. "Small sips, baby. Just small ones." Behind them, the group of survivors dragged their injured through the sand, too quiet now for comfort. Every step was slower, heavier. The fear that had driven them was fading into something worse. Hopelessness. They'd followed the old pipeline route out of the city, staying low among the sparse mesquite. Lucas led the way, silent, his arm still in a crude splint. He seemed to know where he was going, but Mara could feel something in him shifting, a tension coiling tighter with every mile. By early afternoon, they reached an abandoned ranch. Sun-bleached wood, windows broken, a tattered American flag still clinging to the pole out front. The place smelled of dust, rust, and memory. "Here," Lucas said, pushing the door open. "We rest here for a while." Mara guided Ethan inside, settling him onto an old couch covered in sand. The others collapsed onto the floor. For a moment, there was only the sound of breathing, rough, uneven, alive. Then Mara turned to Lucas. "You said the cartel wanted something you took. What is it?" He didn't answer. He was at the window again, scanning the horizon. "Lucas." He exhaled slowly. "It's not what I took. It's what I kept." Mara frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" He finally turned. His eyes, tired, sunburnt, haunted, met hers. "Do you remember what I told your boy to carry?" Her heart skipped. "His backpack. What about it?" Lucas nodded toward it, lying by the couch. "Open it." Something in his tone made her hands go cold. She knelt, unzipped the backpack slowly. Inside were the things she'd packed: inhaler, cereal bars, wallet. But beneath them, wrapped in a small plastic bag, was something else. Something heavy. She pulled it out carefully. It was a small black case, the kind that might hold tools or electronics, sealed with electrical tape. No labels. "What is this?" she asked. Lucas swallowed. "Evidence." "Evidence of what?" He hesitated, then said it quietly, like the words themselves carried danger. "Proof that the Reyes cartel launders money through half the city's law enforcement, including the El Paso Police Department and Border Patrol." Mara stared at him. "You're saying—" "I worked for them once," he interrupted. "Not by choice. I fixed their cars, moved their shipments, kept my mouth shut. But I saw things. I recorded everything I could. That drive, it's got faces, ledgers, names. Enough to burn their whole operation down." Her heart thudded in her chest. "And you put it in my son's bag." "It was the only safe place," he said. "They'd never suspect a child." Mara's jaw tightened. "You risked his life." "I saved it," Lucas shot back. "They would have killed us all if I hadn't hidden it." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Dust drifted through the cracks in the roof, swirling in the sunlight. Then Mara said, voice low and steady, "You brought a war to my door, Lucas." "I know," he said. "And now we have to finish it." That night, the desert turned cold. The survivors huddled around a weak fire made from splintered furniture. The stars above were mercilessly bright, the kind of beauty that makes you feel small, temporary. Ethan slept curled against his mother's side. Mara watched the flames flicker, her thoughts a blur of fear and exhaustion. She could still see her apartment in her mind, the soft light through the curtains, the sound of rain, all of it gone. Lucas sat across from her, his face half lit by firelight. He looked older now, worn down by guilt. "They'll find us," Mara said quietly. "Won't they?" He nodded. "They'll search every mile until they do." "So what's the plan?" He looked into the fire. "We get across the border to Las Cruces. There's a contact, A journalist named Grace Holden. She's been investigating Reyes for years. If we can get her the drive, she'll make it public. Mara hesitated. And if they find us before that? Then we don't let them take us alive. His tone was calm, but it chilled her to the bone. By dawn they were on the move again. The desert wind had shifted, carrying dust like a storm warning. They followed a dry creek bed north, the sky burning orange behind them. Around mid-morning they saw it, a thin column of smoke on the horizon. Then another. Lucas stopped. They're tracking us. How do you know? They burn the ground behind every search line, he said. That's their signal. Mara's pulse spiked. Then we move faster. But they couldn't. One of the injured collapsed. Another was delirious with fever. The sun was brutal, each step like walking through fire. By noon they reached a stretch of highway, empty, shimmering in the heat. A faded green sign read, Las Cruces, 12 miles. Mara turned to Lucas. We can't walk 12 more miles. He looked at her, then at Ethan, who was struggling to keep up. There's a gas station 2 miles ahead. We'll find a car. They pushed forward, the air heavy with the smell of oil and dust. When they finally reached the gas station, it looked abandoned. A cracked sign, windows boarded, an old Coke machine tipped on its side. Lucas tried the door. It opened with a creak. Inside, the air was stale, thick with the scent of old gasoline. Shelves were half empty, dust-covered. Mara searched for water while Lucas checked the back office. Ethan wandered toward a dusty rack of maps. Then she heard it, the sound of an engine. Her blood froze. Lucas was already at the window. His face went pale. Down the highway, a convoy of black vehicles was approaching, fast. He grabbed the backpack, shoving it into Mara's hands. Take your son. The back. Now. What about you? I'll slow them down. She shook her head. No, you won't. He smiled faintly, the first trace of warmth she'd seen in days. You helped me when no one else would. Let me return it. He pressed the keys to an old pickup into her hand. It might start. If it doesn't, run east until you see the Redwater Tower. Grace's people are there. Lucas. But he was already gone, moving toward the front of the building, gun in hand. Mara pulled Ethan close, heart pounding, and ran out the back. The desert wind howled like a warning. Behind her, the sound of engines grew louder. Then the crack of gunfire shattered the silence. She didn't look back. She didn't see Lucas take cover behind the rusted fuel pumps, firing until the clip ran dry. She didn't see the man in the white suit step calmly from the lead SUV, a gold cross gleaming at his throat. Miguel Reyes looked at the gas station, at the rising smoke, and smiled faintly. She's running, he said. Just like her father. The man beside him frowned. Her father? Reyes's smile deepened. Oh, she doesn't know, does she? He turned toward the desert. Find the woman and the boy. Bring them to me alive. The sky over the basin was a bruise of late afternoon, purple at the edges, heat still hanging in the air like a held breath. The desert had swallowed their footprints, but not the memory of what they'd done. Mara drove the battered pickup with hands that did not steady, the engine coughing and coughing until it found a rhythm, like a tired animal finally dragging itself along. Ethan slept in the passenger seat with his forehead pressed to the cold window, a dried smear of tears on his cheek. He slept like children do when the world has been too loud. Brittle, exhausted, trusting. Dust rose behind them in a thin ribbon that the wind tried to unravel. The landscape blurred. Mesquite, scrub, the occasional rusted trailer. All the small relics of attempts to live against the sun. Mara kept thinking of Lucas dying behind a gas pump, of the flash of his white shirt, of the way he smiled at her when he gave her the keys. That smile had been an apology and a benediction. Grace Holden's name felt like a promise in her mouth. A promise of light. Lucas had said Grace would broadcast the drive. She would make Reyes where no one could hide. But promises are fragile things when measured against a man in a white suit who smiled like a god of commerce. They reached the farmhouse with a red water tower at dusk, its ladder like a spine against the darkening sky. A small cluster of vehicles crouched near a fence, 3, then 4 headlights dark as eyes. Mara slowed, heart lodged in her throat. Figures moved in the shadows. People she didn't know, who might be friends or might be saviors, or might be something worse pretending to be both. "Stay here," she told Ethan, though she had nowhere to go without him. She set the pickup in a ditch and crouched by the rear, the backpack heavy against her chest like a heartbeat. The weight of it was the weight of everything she'd ever done to survive and the weight of whatever she had to do next. Someone approached, a woman with salt and pepper hair and a reporter's stance, maybe 30, maybe 40, with a face that had been mapped by deadlines and disbelief. "Grace, you Lucas's friend?" she asked, voice like wind over paper. She didn't ask Mara's name. She didn't need to. "He helped us," Mara said. "He's..." The words failed like brittle glass in her mouth. Grace's eyes flicked over Ethan's small form, then back to Mara. "We can't stay. They're sweeping the county. I can get you into a safe house in Albuquerque, but not until we hand off whatever that is. You have the drive." Mara clutched the black case. It felt foreign like a hot coal. "Yes, Lucas. We need to see it," Grace said. There was no heat in that need. Only procedure. Mara hesitated. The desert smelled of sun-warmed sage and rot. Inside the pickup, something in her tightened. Something that had always measured risk by the size of her son's breath. If she handed it over, would it be enough? Would Grace's contacts be brave enough? Would the cameras be brave enough? Lucas had promised. But Lucas had promised a lot of things. Survival, escape, a life. Why risk it? Grace asked softly. "If they catch you with that, they'll take you to Reyes themselves. We need it in our hands to publish. To force his men out of the open." Mara thought of Lucas behind the pumps, firing until the clip ran dry. She replayed his laugh in her head, an uneven thing that cracked the way ash cracks when it cools. He'd given her the keys like a benediction, like an absolution. He'd believed she could run. She had believed herself a woman who could run for her child. But belief is not a thing you can fold into a backpack. "The safe house?" she asked. The words were small. Grace's jaw tightened. "It's a risk. But it's a path." From somewhere a dog barked, sharp and sudden, and the sound skittered through the night like a warning. Mara felt the hair on her neck stand up. Her body was tuned to the country's rhythms now. How danger approached like rain, how to smell it on the wind. They moved fast. A convoy of 3 cars. Grace's small sedan, a truck that smelled of tobacco, and a van whose windows were blacked out, pulled away into the dark. Mara followed, Ethan still half asleep against the cool glass. For a few miles she drove like the world might be another place when they arrived. But midnight keeps teeth. The radio, a scratchy AM that would be right for a motel, carried nothing but static and the faraway sound of a police scanner. Then a voice. "Be advised, there's movement on Route 24, possible convoy. All units." The transmission was cut like a thread. Mara's hands clenched the wheel. Behind them came a low, rolling sound. Headlights carved the horizon, a wave of black glass. Her stomach dropped to cold water. "They found us," she breathed. Grace swore under her breath and slammed the wheel, sending the convoy across a service road, gravel shooting like bright insects. The drivers behind them were professionals, hands steady, eyes like knife blades. For a moment Mara felt the kind of fear that is a wire in the chest, ready to snap. She thought of turning the wheel, of taking Ethan and disappearing into a canyon. She imagined a clean canyon where they could live with no names. But the weight of the drive was a hot iron against her ribs. If she ran with it, what did that make her? A thief of truth. A fugitive carrying evidence that could liberate or damn a city. The first SUV hammered past them, then another, tires throwing pebbles like confetti. Men in dark jackets leaned from windows like carved statues. A spotlight caught the flank of Grace's car and painted it in daylight. Mara pulled over. The convoy rolled to a stop behind them like a slow wave. Floodlights stabbed the night. The man who stepped out was not like the rest. He wore a jacket, not a suit, but the way he walked was the same as those who followed Miguel Reyes. Measured, smiling with teeth that had practiced benevolence. He tilted his head at Mara. "Grace Holden," he said. "Finally." Grace froze. Her face drained of color. "Who sent you?" she asked. The man's smile did not leave his face. "We're here on behalf of Mr. Reyes. Hand over the drive and no one gets injured." Mara's body hummed with cold fury. "You can't." The man's eyes flicked to Ethan, then to Mara, then to Lucas's empty place in her chest. "We're very serious." Grace looked at Mara like a judge looking at an accused. "We can't give them what they want. Then we'll take it by force." The man's voice was velvet. The first tactic was the one Mara had feared most. The bargaining of human lives. She thought of Lucas, and for the first time she understood what he had meant. That survival had a price. "Get out," Grace whispered. She reached for something beneath the seat, a recorder? A phone. And the man smiled again as if she'd revealed a joke. "You have 30 seconds, he said. Mara could hand the drive to Grace, walk away. Let Grace try to outrun Reyes in court or in the public square. But a bad trade had already happened. She had already traded her apartment and her quiet for 10 strangers and a bleeding man on the highway. Now the math was tight and cruel. Evidence for life. She looked at Ethan, asleep, lashes feathered across his cheeks. He would not understand the weight of the decision. He would hold her hand and believe. She did not want to be the kind of mother who let other people die because she was afraid to make a sound. She did not want to be the kind who let a man give his life because she needed to keep hers. The choices folded into each other like sharp paper. Mara unzipped the backpack slowly. The darkness inside was like a throat. She felt the eyes of the men on her, the hot breath of the world waiting. She reached in and brought the black case into the light. It gleamed like a confession. The man in the jacket moved forward. "Hand it over," he said calmly. Mara's hands did not tremble as she did something she had never done before. She put the case down at her feet on the gravel, let the world choose. Behind her, a gun barked, 2 shots. Someone screamed. Ethan jolted awake, tears sliding down his cheeks. Mara grabbed him and pressed him to her, a feral protective motion. The world condensed to the small roundness of his body, the rapid thud of his heart against hers. Grace lunged for the drive. The man in the jacket moved like a spring and knocked her hand aside. A second man shoved Grace against the car. The rest of the convoy closed in with the smooth, terrifying efficiency of wolves. Mara's knees buckled. Her decision had been a kind of power and its own terrible weakness. She had handed over the potential salvation of a city to protect the flesh at her breast. And she had done it in public, with men watching who measured mercy with the width of their smile. "You made a choice," Lucas had said once, earlier when they had still thought they could outrun everything. "There's always a bill." Mara understood then that the debt had to be paid. The man in the jacket lifted the black case and smiled. "Thank you," he said. "Very reasonable." He did not go. He could have left, taken the case, and spared them more breath. But he stepped closer and said something under his breath that cut the thin ribbon of dark between Mara and him. "We need one more life," he said softly. "To be sure." Mara's world narrowed to a single bright point of understanding. They wanted a show. They wanted to make the city feel the cost. A life to write the lesson in blood. Her mouth went dry. She looked at Grace, defiance turning to pleading on the reporter's face. She looked at Ethan, already shaking, drawing the world into himself. "Take me," Mara heard herself say. The words came out small, but they were steady. The man in the jacket blinked. The men behind him murmured. "No," Grace protested. "You can't." "It's my choice," Mara said. Her voice was an anvil. She set Ethan back in the car and climbed out like someone stepping onto a stage. "Take me." "Not him." They laughed, a low sound that tasted of rust, But they obeyed because they wanted to make her choose, and she had chosen. The man in the jacket produced a chain and cuffed her hands. Not rough, a perfunctory tenderness before abuse. He read her the terms as if he were testing the paper's grain. Deliver Lucas to Reyes in 2 hours, or she would be taken to a place where people disappeared. And if she tried to escape, they would kill her son. Ethan screamed. Grace grabbed for Mara, fingers pressing into the unbroken skin of her arms like a lifeline. You can't bargain with them, she said, voice breaking. You'll never get Lucas back. Mara closed her eyes. The desert pressed against her eyelids. White heat, the scrub's roughness, the taste of dust in her mouth. She had made her choice. To trade what could be sacrificed for what could not. For the child who would never know the shape of this night except through her bones. As they led her toward the convoy, the man in the jacket leaned in close and said with a faint, patented politeness, "Tell your friend Lucas that we'll be generous if he comes on his knees." Mara's chest was a hollow bell where hope echoed and died. She walked because the choice had already been made in the quiet, where mothers make small wars for the sake of a sleeping child. Her hands rubbed raw by the cuffs, her feet kicking up dust. She walked into the teeth of the cartel, carrying the knowledge that her sacrifice might not save anyone she loved. Might only be a story. Might be a lie. But as she walked, her heart beat not for the white-suited man or the reporter or the drive, but for a small figure sleeping in the car, trusting the world to keep its promises. The world, Mara thought, never keeps promises, people do. The convoy started toward the gas station where Lucas had last held his ground. Mara's feet dragged. Night swallowed them like a wound. And somewhere in the dark, Lucas waited, breathing shallow, the echo of a laugh still in his throat. The desert at night had no mercy. It stretched outward like a black ocean, and the headlights of the convoy carved thin veins of light through the dust. Mara sat between 2 armed men in the back seat of the SUV. Her wrists bound, her throat dry. The air inside smelled of oil, sweat, and leather. She didn't speak. She just listened, to the rhythmic hum of the tires, the faint metallic rattle from the weapons, the whisper of her own heartbeat. Every few minutes, one of the men would glance at her, not cruelly, just curiously, like she was a puzzle that didn't fit. In the front seat, the man in the jacket, Reyes's lieutenant, spoke softly into a radio. "We have her. The boy's with the journalist. She's heading north." Crackle. Then a voice, smooth and composed. "Good. Bring her to me. I want her to see what mercy looks like." Miguel Reyes. The name itself felt like a shadow across her skin. Mara looked out the window. The moon hung low and yellow over the ridgeline, lighting the outline of the old gas station in the distance, a dark skeleton against the sand. That's where they were taking her. Where Lucas had fallen. The thought clawed at her. Not just because he'd died for her, but because she'd started to believe that maybe she hadn't deserved it. They stopped just after midnight. The air was cold enough to bite. The ground shimmered faintly under the moonlight, the sand littered with shell casings from the last gunfight. They pulled her from the car and led her toward the old service building. The door creaked open. Inside, the lights were dim, a single generator humming somewhere in the back. A long table had been set up, covered in maps, photographs, stacks of cash. And standing at the far end, immaculate as always, was Miguel Reyes. His white suit glowed under the low light, his gold cross catching the gleam of the bulb. His eyes, dark and precise, lifted toward her with a kind of cold amusement. "Mara Jennings," he said, as if he'd known her his entire life. "You opened your door to my enemies. You made them family. Tell me, was it pity or defiance?" She swallowed. "It was humanity." He smiled faintly, as if the word offended him. "You think I am inhuman? I think you forgot what it means to be anything else." He studied her face for a long time, then motioned for his men to leave. The room emptied until only 2 guards remained by the door. Reyes walked slowly around the table, his shoes silent on the concrete. "Do you know who your father was?" he asked suddenly. The question caught her off guard. "What?" He tilted his head. "Your father, Mara. Do you know his name? Her mouth went dry. He left when I was 2. Reyes said softly. Then perhaps he didn't tell you his name wasn't Jennings. Her chest tightened. What are you talking about? Reyes smiled, not kind, not cruel, just patient. Your father's name was Daniel Cortez. He worked for me 25 years ago. He was a good man, loyal. Until he wasn't. Until he tried to steal from me and flee with evidence. Just like Lucas did. Her heart stuttered. That's not true. I killed him myself, Reyes continued. His tone calm, conversational. But his wife, your mother, she begged for your life. I let her go. I was merciful. The floor seemed to tilt beneath her. Reyes took a step closer. And now, all these years later, his daughter shelters another thief. Another traitor. Tell me, is that fate or blood? Mara's vision blurred. Her knees weakened, but she forced herself to stand. You killed my father. I corrected a mistake, Reyes said. Now I offer you the same mercy I offered your mother. Hand me the drive, and I will let your son live. Resist me, and you'll bury him the same way she buried your father. The words fell into her like stones. She stared at him. The glint of his cross, the stillness of his hands, the absolute certainty of his cruelty. For a long time she said nothing. Then softly, You'll never touch him. Reyes sighed. Pride. He turned toward the door. Bring me the boy. The guards hesitated. Sir, the reporter. Bring them both. Mara's pulse surged. Panic cut through the shock like lightning. No. Reyes didn't look back. It's already in motion. She lunged forward, the chain biting into her wrists, but one of the guards grabbed her. The other raised a rifle. And then a flash. The window shattered. A shot cracked through the night, clean and sharp. The guard beside her dropped instantly, blood splattering across the wall. The second turned, shouting, but another bullet found his chest. Mara froze. Outside a voice shouted. Down! It was Lucas. Alive. He burst through the doorway, limping, his arm still wrapped in torn bandages, face streaked with dirt. His eyes found hers, fierce, alive, burning. You didn't think I'd let you do this alone, did you? Reyes turned slowly, his calm finally breaking. You should be dead. Lucas raised his pistol. I was. Gunfire exploded. The air filled with smoke and screams. Mara dropped to the ground as glass shattered, dust raining from the ceiling. Lucas dove behind a table, returning fire. Reyes moved toward the back exit, barking orders in Spanish. Two of his men dragged him toward a waiting car outside. Lucas grabbed Mara's wrist, breaking her chains with the butt of his gun. Come on! They ran, through the smoke, through the echo of gunfire, through the blinding light of the desert night. Outside, headlights flashed across the sand. Grace's van screeched to a stop beside them, door swinging open. Get in! Grace shouted. Mara shoved Ethan inside. He was crying, clutching her neck, and climbed in after him. Lucas fired 2 last shots before jumping into the back seat. Grace slammed the gas pedal. The van lurched forward, tires spitting dust. Behind them, the gas station went up in flames. The explosion tore through the night, lighting the desert for miles. No one spoke for a long time. The road stretched empty ahead, the orange glow fading behind them like the last breath of something monstrous. Mara held Ethan close, her face buried in his hair. Lucas leaned against the door, pale and shaking. Is it over? Ethan whispered. Mara kissed his forehead. Almost. 2 days later the story broke. Grace published everything, names, accounts, recordings. The drive's data filled every news cycle from El Paso to Washington. Within hours, Reyes's network began to crumble. His bank accounts frozen. His allies arrested. But Reyes himself gone. No one knew if he'd died in the fire or escaped into the desert. Some said they saw a man in a white suit walking along the highway that morning, his gold cross gleaming in the sun. Mara didn't care. She and Ethan moved into a small house outside Albuquerque. A garden, a rusted swing, a sky that finally looked kind. Lucas stayed for a while, healing, then left quietly one morning, leaving only a note. You gave me a reason to live again. Don't waste it. She kept it in her kitchen drawer. Every night, after Ethan fell asleep, she'd step outside and look at the stars. The silence of the desert was different now. No longer cruel but vast, forgiving. One night, she noticed a package on her doorstep. No return address. Inside was a single photograph. Her, Ethan, and Lucas outside the van, the fire behind them turning the night to gold. On the back, scrawled in small handwriting, "Mercy is not weakness. It's rebellion." She smiled through the tears. The horizon was quiet again. But somewhere beyond the border, she knew the war wasn't over. Not really. Still, for the first time in years, she felt something that almost frightened her with its simplicity. Oh. And as the wind whispered across the dry fields, carrying the last ashes of what she'd survived, Mara Jennings finally understood what redemption felt like. Not victory, but survival with love still beating inside her chest.